In a tomb in the depths of hell, the Doomslayer waits to resume his slaughter. Once unearthed, he will kill and kill and kill, and the blood will never stop running, like in the old times. That's the plot of the new Doom. It's been a long time since the old Doom, and time has not diminished the player's bloodlust one iota, so now we will all doom again, this time in high definition. There are characters and dialogue, but they're terrible and ultimately pointless. The bulk of the story of New Doom is about itself as a game, and about the player as a player. It doesn't try to connect you to the game world through any kind of realism or naturalism. It deliberately and enthusiastically rejects both those things. It tries, instead, to connect you to the game directly as a game, as software, as a pure and true arcade experience. In theater, there's the fourth wall, the unspoken, unseen barrier and creative agreement whereby the actors and the production pretend that the audience isn't there, and the audience pretends that they're not plainly visible to the actors. In games, especially first-person games, the fourth wall usually works a little differently, whereby the audience and the game's protagonist are meant to be indistinguishable. We are not typically, as players, meant to recognize that we are having a completely different experience than the protagonist, that we are sitting at home pushing buttons and doing mundane things, while it's only the protagonist who is performing actions and doing fantastical things. When people talk about atmosphere and immersion, they're usually talking about how well the game is able to make you ignore the fact that the player and the protagonist are two different people. The new Doom's narrative genius, and I do mean that, it's brilliantly executed and conceived, is in how the fourth wall is as transparent as your computer screen. You are never meant to feel like anything you see or do is plausible, believable, or sane. You are meant to experience the impossible, the outrageous, and the ridiculous, with full knowledge of its unreality, and an unbroken chain of high-speed violence, where any pause or any hesitation can be fatal. Doom 3 cared about atmosphere and immersion. The new Doom never slows down enough to even begin pursuing those things, and through a combination of momentum, joyfulness of mechanics, and visual artistry, finds itself never even needing those things to begin with. It's the opposite approach from Machine Gain's Wolfenstein: The New Order, wherein the source material is transformed by taking it more seriously and giving it more weight. Here, the lightness of heart, swiftness of movement, and tides of blood are preserved, quite literally, as sacred and ritualistic parts of the game experience. It's not a sequel, it's a reboot. But more than that, it's one of the most explicitly devotional reboots I've ever seen. Which is appropriate, considering that the source material has taken on a larger-than-life quality of its own. Doom popularized first-person shooters. It popularized the PC as a gaming platform. Bill Gates himself starred in a promotional video where he finds himself inside Doom with a trench coat and a shotgun, there to kick ass and tell you about the revolutionary new features of Windows 95. The Doom guy is not just a space marine, he's the space marine, the first one, the ass-kicker from the time when the Bullet Labyrinth was king. The new Doom takes that nostalgic sentiment, the shared legend of what Doom has meant to gaming at large, and then uses that as the in-game setup of the plot. Doom 3 was a sequel to Doom 1 and 2. It tried to take Doom and move it forward, with a slower feel, fewer enemies, a less aggressive, more survival horror-influenced approach to combat. And for a long time, I thought I wanted a Doom 4, a game that took Doom 3 and then built on top of that, a contemporary version of Doom 2's Hell on Earth campaign, just like Doom 3's was a soft retread of the Doom 1 campaigns. For a long time, that's the game they were actually working on, but they canceled it. Pete Hines, Bethesda's vice president of PR and marketing, told Polygon that it was canceled because it was bland and indistinct from other shooters. Quoting Hines, "You could probably close your eyes and imagine a Call of Doom or a Battle Doom game where it starts to feel way too much like, wait, this doesn't feel like Doom, it feels like you're playing some other franchise with a Doom skin on it." End quote. Generally, you take PR folks with a grain of salt, but in this case I think he's really right. In a high-definition version of Hell on Earth, with modern mechanics the way Doom 3 brought in the mechanics of its time, would be lacking in personality, lacking in heart, lacking in that essential spark that made the first two games so unmistakably iconic that, while frequently imitated, they still remained peerless in their particular blend of blood, mazes, and art styles for years and years and years. Forward-looking games, like Doom 3, are necessarily about pushing boundaries of technology and format. As a reboot, the new Doom asks different questions. It looks backwards and asks, what experiences did the old Dooms relay that have been lost to time? Where did we go astray? If you look to Doom 3, you can see the trap, the realism trap. The idea that the best way to show off game technology is to make it seem real, to make it feel gritty. Showing off a game engine and designing a grimdark world for your shooter used to go hand in hand, all in the name of preserving the fourth wall, the illusion that player one is the protagonist. Doom 1 and 2 could not on a technical level ever come close to any kind of realism, so they never try. They never conceived of the protagonist as a character either. They never even named him. He's the Doom guy. He's the avatar of Player 1's bottomless digital wrath. He's hands on a gun and darting eyes under a helmet. This fundamental, one-dimensional inhumanity is given mythological dimensions by the new Doom. Doom guy kills and kills and kills, and he will never stop. He will never run out of battles or battlefields. If you saw him as a real human, like Blazkowicz in the New Order, it would be an existential nightmare. If you see him as a mythological force of unbridled avarice, it works. So, from minute one of the game, that's what you are. The Doom Slayer is not a realistic figure. He is a figure of myth and legend. His slaughter across Mars is a ritual bound by destiny to endlessly repeat. The plot of Doom is not anything with Samuel Hayden or the UAC or Argent Energy. The plot of the game is that Doom itself is a ritual, and that the players, as themselves, as players, are invited to accept communion at its altar. One of the first lines of narration, given like the incantation of an ancient prophecy, is actually cribbed from a comic book of the original Doom. The line, "Rip and Tear," comes from the Doom guy's berserk inner monologue. The full line is, "Cyberdemon, big deal, he's slim pickings. Rip and tear, rip and tear, rip and tear your guts. You're huge. That means you have huge guts. Rip and tear." The new Doom doesn't just make this a canonical way to characterize the Doom guy, it makes it a catechism for the broader game design. First and foremost, the game's most basic AI and level design punish anyone trying to use cover or stealth, or anything that isn't explicitly running and gunning. You have to run, you have to gun, or there's no point in playing Doom over any other shooter in the market in the first place. There are a number of structural changes to how enemies work and how the levels are designed from the first couple of games, and while these changes are large, their intent is clear. Force the player to experience the savage, merciless, lightning-fast combat rhythms of the original Dooms by making any other strategies totally unviable. The new Doom will reach as wide an audience as the original Dooms, wider even, but it also has to deal with a new complication. In the mid-90s, id wrote the book on first-person shooters. Their rhythms were the first first-person shooter rhythms that most players learned. The new Doom has to deal with a decade and a half or more of different shooters teaching players different rhythms like those in Doom 3. Doom 3 doesn't play much differently than most standard-issue modern FPS games. People are accustomed to games that reward caution and care, where higher difficulties require minimizing contact with the enemy. The old Dooms had a different philosophy, where the combat loop rewards momentum and mercilessness, where the solution to higher difficulty is to kill more things faster. This is what the new Doom perceives has been missing from FPS design, what made the originals unique, what would make the reboot unique as well if it could just nail down the slippery mix of mechanical speed and single-minded bloodthirstiness that formed the foundation of what made Doom Doom. I've seen a number of people say that the new Doom is a dark and grim game on account of its violence and blood, but I never experienced that to be the case. Doom is a riot of color and action, a sensory experience focused on the absolute immediate moment, as opposed to an atmospheric shooter which builds tension over time. For all its blood, and there is a comically endless amount of blood, Doom is one of the most truly joyful game experiences I've had in a long time, and more than any deliberate element of its design, it's this sense of pure fun, shared fun between developer and player, that makes the reboot so comprehensively successful. One of the biggest structural changes from the earlier Dooms to the new Doom is the switch from corridor labyrinths to wide-open multi-level arenas. After all, wasn't the outrage over Bioshock Infinite's swap from the corridors of Rapture to the arenas of Columbia indicative of a general sentiment that arenas are somehow inherently bad? I liked Infinite a lot, but I see why people have that complaint. Except here with Doom, it's a whole different situation. If you pull apart the design of the first level, you can see just how different in intent and execution the new Doom is over Bioshock Infinite. Yes, both have multi-level arenas, but where Infinite simplified and streamlined a wide array of tactical options, ones that rewarded craftiness and subterfuge, to a smaller combat-only list, the new Doom doesn't simplify at all. It intensifies and it expands on pre-existing mechanics and rhythms. Old Doom's corridors are iconic, but they serve a technical purpose as well. It's not like the original Dooms are exactly full 3D as far as the sprites are concerned, and large outdoor areas look really terrible. Plus, corridors take up fewer computer resources than larger areas. When you transition from level to level, you'd see a wide map showing all the levels from above, marking cleared locations with a blood spatter, and pointing you with an actual "you are here" arrow to where you're going next. When you've put on your armor and gotten your shotgun and finished the parts of the level that serve as tutorial in the new Doom, you head on up an elevator. It's been corridors so far. Then the title screen for Doom, a heavy metal guitar riff, and the elevator doors open on Mars. The giant, sprawling face of Mars, which you'll fight your way across miles of. There is no more between mission map, because you experience all of those transitions in real time now. The scope of your journey preserved, your experience of that journey made vastly more engaging and vivid. The corridors of the original game kept you running, kept you confused and guessing, kept giving you the impression of danger around every corner. These arena battles are actually no different. They've just taken maybe 75% of the walls away and added maybe twice as many enemies. You still experience the game on a moment-to-moment basis pretty much the same way. Shoot, move, dodge, pivot, switch direction, jump, shoot, press the use key. With Infinite, the popular complaint was that the tactical options were reduced, and that the gamified violence was given too much prominence with the switch to arena battles from corridor shooting. Here, in the new Doom, the arena allows for greater freedom of mobility and moment-to-moment tactics than the corridors ever actually could. A hallway full of demons is, after all, a funnel full of demons. Here you have a legitimate, self-contained battlefield with twists, turns, and secret advantages where a whole horde of demons are leaping, snarling, and hurling death in every direction, while you are breathlessly doing the same. And the gamified violence in Doom isn't the means to an end, it's the end, the destination, and the thing the road is paved with both. The spirit is the same in the new Doom as in the old Doom. The new format just lets it breathe easier, go faster, spiral out in much wider and more chaotic directions. It doesn't matter which direction you go. You just have to go that direction as furiously as possible. Besides, the new Doom really is a labyrinth shooter in the traditional mold, something unseen in a AAA title in years. Despite its penchant for arenas, the levels are unbelievably huge, taking an hour or more apiece to complete. Within these winding, wonderfully unrealistic places are always more than a half dozen well-hidden secrets. I'm terrible at finding them. I got maybe a third of what's in the game on my first go-around, but I already want to play again and look harder. That's the thing about the original purpose of secrets in games. It's not about giving the player power or checking off collectibles on a list. It's about the level designer putting in something subtle and clever that most people, and I mostly fit into the most people category, breeze right on by and never notice. Only the players really paying close attention will find these things, and when they do, it's a genuinely special little moment, a hidden thing, a private thing, secret knowledge now shared between game maker and game player. A good secret taps into that sense of joyfulness I was talking about earlier. This new Doom has some of the best secrets to come along in gaming for a long time. One reliable secret, once per level, is a hidden lever that opens up some part of the map with the graphics and art style of the old Doom. Not a full level, just a tiny snippet, an interactive snapshot of an iconic moment of the Dooms of ancient times. Part of the self-referential mythology of the game. And they fit. You round a corner, and there's old Doom down the barrel of your gun in the new Doom, and it looks perfectly at home there. Yes, the arena battles alter some of the fundamentals of the level design. There are no longer so many mazes in the explicit rat-going-for-the-cheese kind of way of the originals. Is that bad, though, when you consider that a maze of walls has been replaced by an equally challenging and much less predictable maze of enemies? When you consider the claustrophobic walls have given way to tremendous gorgeous vistas and beautifully lit interiors? Games often struggle with figuring out how to use color. Many games have drab earth tones in the hope that this implies realism. Many others are obnoxiously cartoonish with the implication that games are toy-like in many ways, which some certainly are. The new Doom is neither. It is spectacularly colorful, proudly and exuberantly so, but there's so much detail in the backgrounds, objects, and models, and the color is used so smoothly and skillfully that it's spun far out from all the usual aesthetics of games and palettes and into artistic territory that feels as subversively fresh as the originals did. It's like a heavy metal surrealism, and that is a huge accomplishment. It's something Doom 3 couldn't even pull off for all the impressiveness of its shadows. There are really only 3 things that the game does pull from Doom 3, and all of those things are cosmetic things. They kept the look and feel of the plasma rifle, they kept the model of the Hell Knight, and they kept the look of interactive touchscreens in the game, but not their functionality. They brought back the use key and gave you a big extensive codex instead. That was really the only big mechanical and artistic misstep, in my opinion. If you're going to have touchscreens, don't strip out their interactivity. Let the player use them to explore the story and read entries on that particular terminal at will. Don't just stuff those entries into a menu tab that no one reads and then put an exclamation point next to it as a way to remind players to care about the thing at some point. The new Doom is hugely clever about many aspects of its presentation. The dialogue and written codex entries are not one of those aspects. The game has a strong open from a story perspective. You start off with the breaking free from the chains of your prison, disoriented. Demonic invasion in progress, a terminal helpfully suggests immediately after you find your armor. What you are, what you came here to do, is clear. Kill the demons. Out of sport, out of cruelty, out of necessity, take your pick. Where the game really falters is how it wants a more tangible plot on top of that. It wants something that's so nonsensical and pointless, I'm not sure why it was included at all. There are some parts of it that are likable. The UAC is now a religious corporation, for example, a nefarious one like the Church of Unitology from Dead Space. It's run by a cyborg doctor with an authoritative voice, and there's another scientist, but she's working for the demons and was the one who triggered the demonic invasion. For the entire game, you chase her down, picking up her tools and cleaning up her messes, while the cyborg doctor updates your objectives. Between the two of them is a subplot about how the UAC is solving Earth's energy crisis with Argent energy, which is the power of hell itself. Even the Doom guy doesn't have the time or the inclination to deal with this shit. When instructed to carefully remove the lens of an Argent device, for example, Doom guy just fucking breaks it and moves on, and he does that with all of them. If it's not running, and it's not gunning, it is canonical within the game that the Doom guy just doesn't want to do it. Exposition isn't necessary, and this is fully acknowledged within the script of the game, which then goes on to bend your ear about Argent energy and cyborg Samuel Hayden's vision for mankind's future in the UAC anyway. The thing is, neither of the other, two characters in the game seem to have personalities or tangible motivations. You wait 2/3 of the game to find out why the villain is doing what she's doing, and the answer is the demonic voices told her to. The script has this extremely annoying habit of doing repetitively vague bits of foreshadowing, leading up to a simple and guessable answer. And then there's moments of revelation and exposition which are nothing more than piles of buzzwords. Argent demon energy analysis. Dimensional complication artifact betrayal. You have to put the spork in the sprocket to charge the demon locket. Buzzwords are not actually exposition. Much more storytelling is done through Doom Guy's casual disinterest in completing the goals that Hayden asks him to accomplish than through any of Hayden's actual dialogue. Then, on top of everything else, they quake for the climax. In Quake 4, your commanding officer congratulates you at the climax of the game and then tensely informs you that he has another mission before the fade to credits. And now it's 10 years later and no mission ever materialized. Here, Hayden takes your fancy demon dagger, turns it into a big fancy demon sword, does even more infuriatingly vague foreshadowing, and then banishes Doom Guy with a fade to the credits. All these good ideas in the game, and there are a lot of them, and their very last idea is predictable betrayal by a robot with a sword? I mean, what the fuck happened there? The only way this possibly would make any tonal sense is if they were planning to reboot Daikatana as well, but I don't think they're going that far. Every story beat the new Doom sets up for itself, up to and especially the last, it misses or falls flat on. The thing that throws me for a loop is that it didn't even need to try to hit these story beats in the first place, and most of the time it seems like the game knows that too. Traditional storytelling, like in movies and books and such, is complex. It tries to create a sense of a world before, after, and beyond the story. You can do traditional storytelling with games, a lot of games do, but you can also do something that games are uniquely, specially suited to do as a medium. Create an experience that exists wholly in the moment, unbound from outside meaning or distraction. The original Dooms did that brilliantly, and the new one does it just as well. Other critics have complained that this game is little more than dumb fun. I disagree. It's smart fun. But the things that are the smartest about it are confined to the absolute present tense experience. Heavy metal music was obviously a big influence for the game, maybe the reboot even more than the original Dooms, and there are worthwhile comparisons to be made between the two. Heavy metal is technical. It requires nimble fingers and tight control of speed and rhythm to master. Heavy metal is operatic. It relies on emotions and themes that are more wild and colorful and exaggerated compared to anything you'd find in the real world. Heavy metal is loud. Heavy metal is fast. And if you're not in the mood for it, heavy metal can be extremely obnoxious. But when you're feeling it, it is the exact right thing. All these things are true of the 2016 Doom. Doom is, at its core, a game of rhythm, a dance with the demons. Even the most controversially gimmicky aspect of the game, glory kills, makes perfect sense rhythmically. They're like punctuation marks in battle. You do some running, some shooting, and then cap off a 5 to 20 second string of carnage with some fabulously gory kill, like ripping off a demon's arm and beating them to death with it, which is a turn of phrase I've heard, but never seen animated until now. The way glory kills refund you health and chainsaw kills refund you ammunition is brilliant. The worse off you are for health, for ammunition, the better an idea it is to go on the offensive. The whole point of the mechanical systems is to rig it so that you never stop moving, never have cause to do anything but experience the glorious immediate. Don't cower, crack them skulls. The whole single-player experience, start to finish, is memorable, engaging, and deeply charming. Doom is not a dark game because it is so in love with violence. It is in love with violence and throwing a feast to celebrate that love. It is the most light-hearted, rewarding shooter to come out in ages. It doesn't stop with single-player either. A person can continue to experience the momentum and destruction of the game systems in the multiplayer, which I honestly don't have that much of an interest in. The original Doom was 4-person deathmatch with no frills, and what you get here is a more standard contemporary array of modes. What's more exciting is SnapMap, a way to generate WODs, or user maps, for a new generation of Doom players and modders. With SnapMap, Doom is more than the strategically nostalgic single-player campaign or the multiplayer community. It's as much a platform for the creativity of its users as the original Doom was. It is not any one thing that made the original Doom so successful. It was the attitude, the technology, the mechanical design, and the moment in history that allowed an ultra-violent maze game to capture the attention of the world. So many of those things are impossible to replicate. To make a good Doom game more than 20 years down the line, you have to ask not what can be done to imitate the original Dooms, but what can be done to recapture the feeling it gave people, the powerful sensations of absolute immediacy and artistic playfulness. Rebooting something like this isn't a checklist kind of affair. You have to ask the right questions. The new Doom is not only a great Doom game, but also more broadly a very meaningful release in this era of game design, less because of the answers it gives, and more because of the questions that it asks itself as a reboot. The game's worthless cliffhanger ending aside, the plot does resolve well. Player 1 beats the game, and the game will be there whenever Player 1's trigger finger starts to itch again. Doom is not complex. It is not a bold new idea. It is an incantation and a ritual, one that holds tremendous satisfaction in the repetition, and the understanding of the act as a formal and artificial thing. The beads of the rosary and the bullets of the chain gun put to the same purpose. There is no pretense of immersion or atmosphere. Doom is just a game. A truly great game. A deceptively smart game. A surprisingly human game. And all it really asks you to do is rip and tear. Thanks for watching. I want to take a moment to thank by name the people who are currently supporting me at $10 a month or more on Patreon. This channel and all the content I do is supported by people who make personal donations through Patreon. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who donates, but these people help me out particularly. People like Cassie, Comfy Hat, Ron Gervais, Christian Zacharianson, Pat Hay, Soeb Sheik, Balder Carlson, Dennis Clark, Nick Cole Hamilton, Kevin DeBolt, Jake Brennan, Ken Young, Dalton Seiler, Brian Hill, Igor Babiuk, Niles D. McDonald, Justin Hughes, Kumaran Vijayan, Nobody, Andrew Steele, Tom, Jared Meyer, Jack Harvey, Sharif Kazemi, Ariel Badger Release, Trivium Art History, Jason K., Rob Tackett, Martin Markov, Gordon Moon, Jake Dobbs, Pei, Divya Faust, Grenville Wilson, Pierce McBride, Colby Howard, Camel, John Walsh, Lee Jones, Daniel Mower-Myrie, Alex Zelato, Brandon Boat, Steven Premel, Matthew, Nathan Campbell, Devin Fitzpatrick, Jake Mays, Sasha Aya, Stephen Patyuk, Angel-Headed Hipster, Simo Polakowski, Todd Martin, Paul Cocker, Warren, Matthew Zender, Dylan Sibley, Cameron Jackson, David Fry, David Reed, Josh, Boris Nielsen, Michael Atwell, Cameron, Alexander Leister, David Gilbreth, I Cannot Fly, Wesley M., Aaron Albuck, Alexander Heavens, Noah Duggins, Martin Karsten, Galak, Brett Galmo, Morton Scanning, Andreas Larson, Lars Ingvar Anderson, Colin, Brad Carr, Ivan Marinov, Josh Farkas, Chris Larkey, Aiden AK-47, Dewey, Anax of Rhodes, Niels Bachfrummer, Spyro Sedaris, Rob Clark, Harley McAvoy, Carl Gleason, Tim Marsh, Joshua Vivi, Tizar Vicarian, Irvin, Joe Hewison, Brad Smith, Connor Biblo, Brad Wallace, Ryan Gunst, Preston Allen, Stephen Lark, Amir Aguilar, Jeffrey Knutson, D, Kimmo Heikkinen, Joe Wolf, Sangustin, Oliver Handlikin, White Zero, Yuri Petnes, Kyle Brown, and Jack Harvey. Thanks again, and thanks again for watching. And about the player as a player. It doesn't try to connect you to the game world through any kind of realism or naturalism. It deliberately and enthusiastically rejects both those things. It tries, instead, to connect you to the game directly as a game, as software, as a pure and true arcade experience. In theater, there's the fourth wall, the unspoken, unseen barrier and creative agreement whereby the actors and the production pretend that the audience isn't there, and the audience pretends that they're not plainly visible to the actors. In games, especially first-person games, the fourth wall usually works a little differently, whereby the audience and the game's protagonist are meant to be indistinguishable. We are not typically, as players, meant to recognize that we are having a completely different experience than the protagonist, that we are sitting at home pushing buttons and doing mundane things, while it's only the protagonist who is performing actions and doing fantastical things. In a tomb in the depths of hell, the Doomslayer waits to resume his slaughter. Once unearthed, he will kill and kill and kill, and the blood will never stop running, like in the old times. That's the plot of the new Doom. It's been a long time since the old Doom, and time has not diminished the player's bloodlust one iota, so now we will all Doom again, this time in high definition. There are characters and dialogue, but they're terrible and ultimately pointless. The bulk of the story of New Doom is about itself as a game. When people talk about atmosphere and immersion, they're usually talking about how well the game is able to make you ignore the fact that the player and the protagonist are two different people. The New Doom's narrative genius, and I do mean that, it's brilliantly executed and conceived, is in how the fourth wall is as transparent as your computer screen. You are never meant to feel like anything you see or do is plausible, believable, or sane. You are meant to experience the impossible, the outrageous, and the ridiculous, with full knowledge of its unreality, and an unbroken chain of high-speed violence where any pause or any hesitation can be fatal. Doom 3 cared about atmosphere and immersion. The new Doom never slows down enough to even begin pursuing those things, and through a combination of momentum, joyfulness of mechanics, and visual artistry, finds itself never even needing those things to begin with. It's the opposite approach from Machine Gain's ass kicker from the time when the Bullet Labyrinth was king. The new Doom takes that nostalgic sentiment, the shared legend of what Doom has meant to gaming at large, and then uses that as the in-game setup of the plot. Doom 3 was a sequel to Doom 1 and 2. It tried to take Doom and move it forward with a slower feel, fewer enemies, a less aggressive, more survival horror-influenced approach to combat. And for a long time, I thought I wanted a Doom 4, a game that took Doom 3 and then built on top of that, a contemporary version of Doom 2's Hell on Earth campaign, just like Doom 3's was a soft retread of the Doom 1 campaigns. For a long time, that's the game they were actually working on, but they canceled it. Pete Hines, Bethesda's vice president of PR and marketing, told Polygon that it was canceled because it was bland and indistinct as Wolfenstein: The New Order, wherein the source material is transformed by taking it more seriously and giving it more weight. Here, the lightness of heart, swiftness of movement, and tides of blood are preserved, quite literally, as sacred and ritualistic parts of the game experience. It's not a sequel, it's a reboot. But more than that, it's one of the most explicitly devotional reboots I've ever seen. Which is appropriate considering that the source material has taken on a larger-than-life quality of its own. Doom popularized first-person shooters. It popularized the PC as a gaming platform. Bill Gates himself starred in a promotional video where he finds himself inside Doom with a trench coat and a shotgun, there to kick ass and tell you about the revolutionary new features of Windows 95. The Doom guy is not just a space marine, he's the space marine, the first one, the